All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on another segment of JAG University. I am here with Pat McBride from Comreal. Pat, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, for our wonderful listeners, Pat is an industrial broker from Comreal. He's also an attorney. Don't see that very often, and we have a lot of questions for him. So, where I kind of wanted to start off here was, let's say I'm a prospective tenant in a warehouse space. I'm going to be leasing. What are some things I should be looking out for? What are some possible red flags that might be out there?
Right. So, typically when we, have a new prospective client or kind of doing an intake, real estate's very location driven. So that would probably be, one of my first questions is, you want to be, we're here in South Florida. We focus mostly on Miami-Dade or Broward counties. So, what's important to you as a prospective tenant in the industrial world? If you're a distribution tenant, a lot of the location is driven by, do you want to deliver last mile? Do you want to be near population centers? Is a lot of your product coming in via the airport or the port? So if a lot of your products coming in through the airport, Doral, the biggest industrial market that we have here in South Florida. And the reason why is because a lot of the tenants, want to be located near the airport there, or if a lot of your stuff's coming in, via Port Miami, then there's other areas that are closer and easier to get to and less expensive than areas like Doral. So I think, location's one of the main driving factors, and then also the features of the building. If you're a distribution tenant, you're going to want dock high space. You're going to want high ceilings if you rack your product, versus a manufacturer is going to have very, very different requirements. They're probably going to be more interested in heavy power or, parking, other features that will distinguish, certain properties from others.
Got it. So basically, even when it comes to general warehouse space, it becomes very important what specifically you're going to do with that space, whether I'm a distributor, whether I'm a manufacturer. So let's focus on, let's say I'm a distributor right now. Let's say, okay, I get most of my products in from the Port of Miami. So I want to be close to the port. I have my location ironed down. I see a building I think that I like. I get this lease. I don't know what's going on. Of course, what I would do is I would consult with a real professional that can guide me through it. But what are some things that would jump out at you, or maybe some things that you see in your business that you might consider a red flag on a lease, or something that may just be a con on a certain property? Right.
So, we've been in the market for almost 40 years. Not myself personally, but me and the team that I work with, and we really know a lot of the landlords. There's more and more institutional landlords that are in the market, every year. But maybe that's kind of one of the first. The lease is only as good as the person that you're signing it with. So is the landlord a private individual that is a professional landlord, or are they someone that inherited one property, or is it more of an institutional landlord where they're in the business of leasing warehouse space, and maybe not just in Miami or Florida, but really nationally. So there's pros and cons of both. Institutions are very good at what they do, and they're professionally run businesses. There's always someone there if they'll hire professional property managers. But local landlords can really, really value the relationships. So it's definitely good to have a professional, like you said, kind of give you the background on who that landlord is. And then I would say if you're at the point of reviewing a lease, you've negotiated your business terms. So you probably have a broker and have come to a deal with the business terms. And then, I've seen all sorts of leases. My background as an attorney definitely helps me, go through and kind of issue spot for my clients, and just kind of puts a second set of eyes. But typically at that point, once you've negotiated the business deal, you're going to have an attorney go through the lease, and kind of just give you an idea of certain things in there that could be problematic. One that's coming up a lot now is, annual increases with all the inflation out there. we're seeing landlords insert CPI increases into leases. So that's, one thing to look at. Who's responsible for what is another big thing. If I'm on the tenant side, I don't want the tenant to be responsible for the roof, the foundation, the structure, the parking lot. Big ticket items that typically the landlord's responsible for. You want to make sure that, the tenant isn't going into a building that's not theirs and then inheriting a big roofing problem or something like that.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I see it for myself, a lot of warehousing that I work on ensuring that sometimes maintenance and upgrades aren't always at the forefront.
Right.
They get put off a bit. So definitely good to make sure that you're not responsible for that sort of upkeep. Now, when we're talking about kind of like nationwide or companies that own a lot of buildings and lease them out as opposed to private landlords, let's say in South Florida, what do you think is sort of the split? Do you typically see more, nationally held or real estate groups owning these warehouses, or is this a market that's dominated by individuals?
So I would say that there's a big pride of ownership in South Florida, in Miami, and I think it's driven by a lot of people that live here are immigrants, and they really want to own property and the things that they operate out of. But every year, I would say there's more and more institutional ownership, and I would say that's probably seen across the board in all the big industrial markets across the country. So there is still a lot of, private owners, whether they're actual owner users, manufacturers, or, distribution companies, or, the various, types of industries that we have here. A lot of them still own their properties. There's plenty of, private owners and investors that still own their buildings. But I would say the trend is that institutions are, capturing a bigger and bigger market share every single year. And, South Florida, because it's so land constrained, it's one of the top markets because of that land constraint. The supply's capped. So, the secret's out, and all these, there's more and more institutional investors every year, and they all want to own something in South Florida.
Got it. Okay, so I mean, that's a good few starting points. We had basically, you want to check on the ownership of the building and see if who you're working with actually knows the landlord. That could be a huge plus. So you can kind of get a feel for how they are. Location is huge, focusing on that. Maintenance of the building, who's responsible for upkeep. I mean, aside from that, what is a typical lease term that you would see?
I think typical is probably a 5-year deal.
Okay.
3-year deals are probably more rare. And, we'll also see, very long-term deals, 10, 15 years. I would say, distribution tenants are probably signing more in that 5 to 10-year range. If you're a manufacturer, or one of our specialties is cold storage, you might be looking at longer-term deals just because from the leasing point of view, there's a lot of capital that's put into the manufacturing or cold storage buildings. And, that's another thing to look at is who pays for those improvements.
Yeah.
But if it's the landlord paying, they're typically going to want, to amortize the cost of those improvements over a longer term. So I would say typically with manufacturing or more heavy build outs, more specialized, it's probably longer lease terms.
Got it. Okay, great. And then, just to kind of wrap up, I mean, my final question would be, how long does this process take? I'm a distributor. I'm looking for, when should I start looking? Let's say I want to be in a warehouse by August 2022.
Right. I would say if you want to be in a warehouse by August 2022, you're already behind the 8 ball.
So we're in November 2021, by the way.
So, it really depends. I mean, if you're leasing already in the market, then you have a hard expiration date, a natural expiration of the lease. We typically say, you should probably reach out to your broker if you don't already have a relationship with one who, should be calling you, telling you that your lease is coming due. But I would say 9 to 12 months.
Wow.
And that's kind of for a distribution type tenant where there's a lot more options than for a manufacturing group or someone that's in cold storage or, if you have a really specialized need, I would say, 12 to 18 months would be, even more ideal.
Got it. And that sounds like it would be a longer timetable than something like office space or retail space like that.
So our specialty is industrial. That's what we do. So I'm not as familiar with office or retail, but I would say yes. I mean, it's the market is just so tight right now where the vacancy rate's below 4%, and that's South Florida's been kind of below the national average. So space is difficult to find. So I would say the sooner the better.
All right, great. Well, Pat, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Tune in for future episodes I believe next we're talking about manufacturing and how that affects your hunt. Thank you very much.